Welcome to the Hunting Beast Report, a live video podcast with Dan Infalt and host Jeremy Gillespie.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Stealth Outdoors. The off-season's a great time to rehab your gear, so head on over to Stealth Outdoors at www.stealthoutdoors.com to pick up some climbing stick wraps, cam buckle covers, platform cable wraps, or stealth strip rolls for all of your miscellaneous silencing needs. Today's show is also made possible by Hunting Beast Gear, innovators in mobile hunting gear and the designers of the Beast Sticks and Beast Stand. Check out the latest products at www.huntingbeastgear.com. And now, on to the podcast. All right, we're back. We're live, not as promised, on Tuesday at 8 o'clock Central. We're at Wednesday, 7 o'clock Central. So, Dan, where were you last night? What's going on?
I was hunting. I got out late, and you had COVID. And
yeah, I'm dying again. Is there anything to report about last night's hunt, or is that
I
it?
didn't get a book.
Okay. I didn't either. When you told me you were going to be out hunting, I snuck out too, even though I'm sick, and went and chased an antelope around a few times. But as often happens with antelope archery, he got the better of me, so couldn't get inside 120 yards.
Yeah, I got a random camera out where I've been onto a buck for 2 years. It keeps getting seen across a certain highway. His rack isn't enormously huge, but he's at least 4, because last year he was at least 3. The rack looks identical to what it looked like last year. But he showed up yesterday morning, and I got the camera in a funnel, and I kind of took a guess to where I thought he might be bedding, and moved in on him, and he didn't show up. I had high hopes. I really kind of thought he'd be where I thought he'd be, but he wasn't. And I had 3 does come in, which was really interesting. They came in together, and they were all mature, and there was no fawns. Makes me wonder if they got a real high coyote population there. I noticed that in Nebraska, there was coyotes everywhere.
Oh yeah.
And the majority of does had no fawns. But it's pretty rare around here to see 3 adult does together with not one fawn.
Maybe that area, huh?
Yeah.
Well, Dan, let's do a news story real quick. This is something local, and we talked about this on a previous episode, and this guy just got a sentence. So I don't know if people remember this, but it says the title is 81-year-old man sentenced to prison for cloning giant, quote, Montana Mountain King sheep for captive trophy hunting. So if anybody wants to read the full story, just Google Montana Mountain King. But we talked about this, it's been several months ago, but the story reads, an 81-year-old Montana man was sentenced Monday to 6 months in federal prison for illegally using tissue and testicles from large sheep hunted in Central Asia and the U.S. Those large sheep, for anybody that knows, are Marco Polo sheep, to create hybrid sheep for captive trophy hunting. And District Court Judge Brian Morris said he struggled to come up with a sentence for Jack Schubarth of Vaughan, Montana. He said he weighed Schubarth's age and lack of a criminal record with a sentence that would deter anyone else from trying to, quote, change the genetic makeup of the creatures on Earth. Morris fined Schubarth $20,000 in addition to the 6 months in prison and ordered him to make a $4,000 payment to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Foundation. And he allowed him to self-report to a Bureau of Prisons medical facility. So just thought we'd touch on that since, that came up in my local news here and we'd talked about it previously.
Yeah, I wouldn't even know that was illegal to clone stuff.
Yeah, I think it's a Lacey Act violation. I don't know exactly what the charge was, but they did say that they were I read some of the affidavit the indictment or whatever in the original case, and it said that basically they were impressed that he was able to clone a sheep from the DNA. So that is impressive. Yeah. I don't know about you, Dan. I don't know anything about cloning animals.
I can see the problems in it, though.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You look at the invasive plant species we have, like buckthorn. and phragmites and stuff.
Yeah.
And buckthorn was brought here as an ornamental plant because it looked cool in somebody's yard. So they sold them as ornamental trees. Somebody brought them here, I think from Eurasia. Anywho, because there's nothing that really eats that tree or anything. And it has so many berries, these purple berries, the birds come and they eat those berries. And then wherever they crap, those trees grow, and they're on every fence line or, all over the place. And it's just taken over our forests. Now you take these sheep and they get into the native herd, and you're going to get some jackwagon that has these on a ranch or something that's thinking, man, if I put that on my mountain, I could shoot a world record sheep there when that breeds with a native sheep because of the double curl or whatever. And you could ruin the whole genetics. There, sheep are pretty fragile.
Yeah. And people that don't live around bighorn sheep, I've just come to know this from living out west. They get pneumonia and stuff real easy from domestic sheep, and they die off. And then FWP, which is Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, that's Montana's game agency. They're forever trying to transplant sheep from one area to another because they want isolated pockets of sheep that can be, if one dies off from pneumonia, it doesn't get them all. And then they can use the other pockets to repopulate the one that died off. So they're real susceptible to disease. And that's just why there's not a lot of them around anymore and why it's such a hard tag to get. So, yeah, that the last thing you need is another a hybrid with who knows what in there. That's my opinion. I mean, people can feel free to disagree, but.
Well, warn everybody in advance. I'm going to probably have a pile full of people come flying through here in a minute because my house unloaded just before the show started. Apparently, my neighbor's barn is on fire. Me and Jeremy were prepping. We heard all the fire engines come flying up. I was like, I wonder what's going on. Then all of a sudden, my wife and my kid running outside to the neighbor's barn's on fire.
Yeah.
So
that's not good.
No.
Not good. Hopefully, everybody's all right.
Yeah, it's probably just going to be his animals, though. He's got, I think he's just got chickens, but still.
Well, Dan,
what's want for a chicken to burn to death?
Yeah. Yeah. Probably too early for rotisserie jokes over there. So, Dan, it's been, were we on last week? I lose track of time too in hunting season, but I feel like we missed last week. So it's been 2 weeks. What have you been seeing in the woods in Wisconsin? And what are your strategies now that we're the title is October Tactics. So obviously it's October now. Give me a review of what you've been seeing and how your strategy changes this, if at all, in early October.
Well, today is the second day I've missed since Wisconsin opened up on the 14th. I've been out every day. So I've been out a lot. Really, I've had a pretty mediocre season so far. The only buck that went by me that I could have shot was a spike. I've seen a lot of does, does almost every sit. But I'm not hunting does and spikes. So that doesn't, it's like I've seen nothing, but I did see and locate one new shooter buck in an area. I went and spot check hunted an area that I had pre-scouted, found some big rubs, moved in, bumped the buck. I moved in for him. Didn't get a crack, but I feel like I'm getting closer. Some of these areas where these big ones live are kind of delicate, though. Nobody really penetrates the area where they live. And because of that, when you go in there, it's very alarming. And that particular buck, I could kick off onto different properties. So I'm being kind of delicate. Gone into a couple hunts. Same with the buck I hunted last night. But that buck I got a little bit more priority on because when pheasant hunters come out, they're going to do some damage. And I haven't been able to locate him since before season. I got a picture of him. And now, just like clockwork, and I expected this, he's showing up now when duck hunters have come into that particular swamp and invaded the area where I figured he was getting around me. So I figured when they came in there, it's a huge swamp. But when you look at it from my perspective and from my scouting, it's a pretty small area where they can bed, where they can live, that has the habitat that they need. So I figured that if I wasn't seeing them, they were in a certain area, and I never got in there to hunt because of the solid east winds that we've had since the beginning of the season. And now he finally showed up. I had a good wind with a north wind, went and hunted him, but I think he's evading the duck area, which puts him where I want him. But when pheasant hunters come out there, that'll come into the other end, and then he's going to completely probably relocate, and then I have to really get inventive about finding him. But I've been out there pounding it, developing targets, narrowing focus, which is what I do. I really did not have a solid lead this year going in. I had old ones like this buck that I was hunting from the prior year, but you really never know until you get a picture if they're alive. Well, I got a picture of him right before season, so I knew he was alive. But other than him, I didn't have much. So you kind of throw a net out there. You throw hunts at likely spots, areas that are known for having big bucks, areas that you've scouted and you think, God, this probably holds one. And you check out the sign. You see if there's rubs. You see if there's big tracks. You hope you see something. And when you find some bucks, some targets, you start narrowing that focus. That's what I do, and I hone in on those particular bucks. A lot of times it is bucks from prior years, but you always got that doubt until you see their sign or you see them physically. And I really like to see them physically because then you know for sure.
Sure.
Going whether a track's splayed or if it's, or a deer got real aggressive and rubbed higher. You're not doing any guessing and you see them,
Dan, can we talk about Eric?
Yeah, Eric has been doing really well. You ask him, he'd probably tell you no, because he's got this kind of, driven attitude, like he's going to kill something, and he's frustrated because he's not getting the shots, but he's been seeing bucks on a regular basis, and I think he's doing really well. I think he's seen shooters like 3 times in the last week and a half. I think last night, 2 nights ago, he watched a bachelor group go through with one that he really wanted to shoot. And he was contemplating with me about whether or not he should go in for the kill, sit back a little bit, maybe hunt the same tree he was in. And he had seen somebody else's blind out there, knew there's another guy in the area. And I said, if I was you, and I don't want to tell him what to do. And I told him that because it might make or break his hunt. But if it were me, I said I would go for broke, and you either blow it or you don't. But just sitting back is just going to inform that deer that you're hunting them, And he's already worried that buck might have figured him out during the night where he was at. And I was like, I would just. He goes, well, there's no trees in there. He goes, there is a tree where they first came into sight. He goes, but I don't know how close they're bedded to that. Because it's all, cattails and crap where they're always, that's where all the big bucks show up is where there's no trees.
Sure.
So there's one tree, real close. And he's like, would you hunt the tree or would you hunt try to hunt them on the ground? I said, if you're in cattails and stuff, really the reality of getting a shot off in the ground is pretty slim. I said, I don't want to tell you what to do. If you think you have a shot and you think that's what you need to do, do it. But if it were me personally, even if it got me only 3 feet off the ground and gave me a shot over the top of the cattails and gave me just a little cover, I'd be in a tree. And he chose the tree. And when he got to the tree, he bumped something. And then the bucks didn't show up. So I believe he's back in there tonight. He was excited about going. But I'd be shocked if he doesn't pound something fairly nice pretty soon.
Yeah, and the reason I wanted to bring Eric up, we were talking a little bit before we got online about one, that you hadn't been seeing much, and 2, that Eric had, but he was maybe a little antsy to move on some properties. And I did notice we had 1 or 2 people that said this is their first season trying your tactics or watching the Hunting Beast. One guy actually said, I think that was his first live episode, so welcome. But I think that's maybe a misconception. It wasn't mine when I first started following you, is that you say hunt a new spot every time. New spot doesn't mean a new property always 10 miles away or 15 miles away. A new spot could be 5 acres away or whatever in an area, especially when, like you said, you've got a confirmed sighting of a shooter. That's the best intel you can have. So maybe talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's really about narrowing that focus. I mean, if you're just hopping around from bedding area to bedding area that you pre-scouted with no real plan, you're probably not going to do real well. Depending on where you're at. I mean, that would work probably better than 90% of the other hunters if you're in Iowa. But if you're in Wisconsin or Michigan, where the numbers of big bucks aren't around as much, there isn't a big buck on every property, and you have to be hunting a big buck in order to kill one. So basically, when I'm narrowing focus and I'm getting on the properties that have bucks and I know there's a buck there, my odds go up dramatically, because these properties I'm throwing a hunt at, there's very likely not even a buck there that I would shoot on the entire property. So being on one that has a buck really ups your odds. And if it has more than one that you'd shoot, ups your odds even higher. So I think most guys get in the mindset of, I hunt this property, that's where I go. And then they hop around looking for a buck there, or looking for the sign there, hunting the best sign they find, throw some cameras out, see what shows up on the cameras. But literally, they're putting all their eggs in one basket. And I don't do that. I hop all over the place. I mean, I can hit a lead on a buck and just take off and go after that buck. And I do hunt a lot of different properties. But my focus really starts to narrow at about this time of the year. And this is also the time of year when you start seeing more sign. The sign starts picking up. You start locking in on where these deer are because of the physical sign they leave behind, like rubs and tracks and scrapes.
Yeah. Well, what about because we're getting, I don't know, 3 weeks into now from Velvet Shed, maybe closer to 4. This is getting to be the point of the season where it's starting to get a little harder to differentiate how fresh a rub is. So what are some of the smaller clues you're looking at, or rubs specifically, excuse me, to help you know if that sign is a day or 2 or 3 old, or if that's 2 or 3 weeks old now?
Well, now if you see sign from the beginning of the season, it's dried up already. It's dry. It's not, the broken branches aren't wet, moist at all. They're, like a toothpick dry. And a trained eye will see that. And you got to learn to look at that stuff. You got to kind of look at the dirt, see what the tracks look like. Have they been washed out since the rain last? Have they faded just from the settling with the wind and stuff? Or are they fresh cut? A fresh track, you can see a cut line where the track built in. That cut line goes away really fast. It'll break down. It'll start to round. It'll start to get blurrier as you look at it. So I'm looking at those tracks. I'm trying to look at the size of them, the size of each individual toe, the length of the track, how deep is it sinking on a walking track? Is it sinking enough that it splays even though that the deer ain't running, which is going to tell you, a deer that slides his feet, open like that when he steps without running is probably a deer that's 200 pounds or more on the hoof.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it won't force that foot apart like that. So I'm looking for that kind of sign. I'm looking for it to be fresh. In like where I saw the new big buck that I got onto. I was sliding into a property for the first time of the year, and I'd only been there a couple times last year, ever. I just went to that property 2 years ago, scouted it, hunted it a couple times. Really didn't see anything I liked, left, but I knew it had potential. So this year I went back in there, and there's like an access trail that takes you all the way around this property. And my idea was to circle that property and come in from the back, wind to nose to my tree. So literally, to go to a spot that's about a mile from the truck, I had to go about 1.75 miles because I had to completely circle it and come in from the backside. But I did that so I'd have the wind to nose. I'm going into an area where deer move all over the place. It's a buckthorn jungle, and nobody goes into that buckthorn jungle. They hunt where the trees are. And those deer are living in that buckthorn in little areas that are, up against some wet stuff. And then they come out and they live in that buckthorn and they walk around freely. And I saw it last year. I saw a lot of deer come out of there, go through there, funnel through there. And what I noticed was there was a lot of sign of deer up in the front of the property, near where it poured into crops. But that's where the hunter sign was too. There was trees in there. There was places where people could hunt. And we hunted at a bunch because there's a bunch of beds in there and stuff, but we never seen a deer. But when I moved back to the funnel back in that buckthorn, there was deer freely moving hours before dark. So I wanted to circle into that and use that trick of wind to nose so that my scent trail from the wind is the same as my ground scent. So if any buck comes in there, and if he wins me, he's going to hit my ground scent and my wind scent. Not that this buck over here hits my wind scent, that buck over there hits my ground scent. I want that as tight an area as possible, so I spook as few deer as possible. So nose to wind, come to that tree and set up. But as I was going in there, when I was going, before I hooked the back of the property, along those crops, I ran into some rubs. And when I looked at them, the oldest rubs are obviously from the beginning of the season. They're all dried up. But there are also rubs that were fairly new, but somewhat dry, still bright orange, and then there's rubs that were still bleeding. There's liquid running down them. And there's a few of each. And some of these rubs were, this big around and snapped off. It takes some neck muscle to do that. I mean, think if you grabbed that with your teeth, if you could break that
right
branch off. It's somewhere between a shovel and a broomstick size in diameter. It takes some muscle to break that tree off, to just shred it, and then find the top of the tree laying 10 feet over where he shook it off his antlers. That tells you some things, so I'm looking at that and I'm saying, okay, this buck is not only rubbed here, he's come back. He's been coming here for a period of time. And usually that'll tell me when a buck is rubbing the same spot over and over again at this time of the year. And the reason I say this time of the year is, for number one, they move short distances this time of the year. You got to get inside of a very short window. They bed near their food. So if he's rubbing there consistently, it's generally near where he lives, where he's spending some time. So it gave me some pause, and I stopped for a minute and I contemplated my options. And I thought, last year it was beans, not corn. This year it's corn. Corn makes them feel a little more comfortable, and beans are usually yellow by this time of the year, and the deer have abandoned them. But last year the deer were not bedded up on this end. They were bedded in deeper and coming to here. But with the corn, maybe they're up here. And I could tell that nobody had been on the property yet. It's not a property that gets hunted very often. It doesn't even look like a hunting property. You can't see a tree from the road. You have to go out across open grass for a long ways, and it just drops into this little swamp that you can't see from the road.
Don't give away all your secrets, Dan.
Right.
Yeah.
So you can't see a lot. So anyways, I figured this buck must be coming from back, but I had this little thought that he might be right there someplace. So what I did is I just followed my route, and I stayed on that human access trail where if they do smell you, that's where they would expect to smell somebody. Went all the way around the property to the back, and I was going to go to where I hook in. And on my mapping app, I had a spot marked where I hook in a trail to where I wanted to go, and you couldn't find it without that. There's very few trees you can hunt on in a buckthorn jungle, so that having that pre-scouted was important, and having an access trail and right to the tree was important. So I was going to where I was going to hook in, and still having a little bit of doubts about walking past those rubs, when I noticed where the trail was a little shaded and the buckthorn had grown over the top in a canopy, and there was no plant growth. On the trail, it got a little dusty, and you could see the imprints of very fresh, very large tracks. And this isn't that far from that rub or those rubs. So that gave me some pause too. And I actually contemplated, I stopped and I contemplated setting up right there, right over the top of the walking trail, but nobody's been walking it. It's not like it's getting used. But I could have got up there, shoot into the brush, and kind of cover any trails leading towards those rubs, cover that trail. And I just thought, I just don't think they're bedding here. I think this deer is moving a little bit of a distance. I'm going to go up and I'm going to hunt that spot. So I went up a little further, curved in at my turn point, and I do basically a 90. So I go up that trail, turn 90, and then take this line straight into the wind, straight to the tree. And I got maybe 50 yards off of that trail, and I heard something behind me, and I turned around and I look, and a very large rack buck, obviously a shooter, got up right alongside of the trail I just walked. So I walked within feet of him. But what I had done is I had stopped and paused to look at my app or something I don't remember why I paused, but I paused and then I heard that and turned around. So when I stopped, he got nervous, got up, showed himself, and boogied out of there. But it shows you if I would have stayed, up tight, I probably would have got a crack at him. He probably would have did his same routine and went to those rubs. But you don't know. You got to take a guess. And based on last year, I took the guess that he'd be back further. And, that first hunt, first time in, and that was the first time in, is your best crack at killing that thing. So it could have been the same thing. If I would have stayed up front, I could have been like, oh, that buck was in the back, and I blew it. So you take your chance. But
sure,
you develop things too. I mean, I've only hunted that area 2 years now, and it was beans and then corn on the surrounding properties. And so now, next year I see rubs like that, I'm going to say, okay, that buck's close. On this property, I think he is up front now. And I did go back and do a hunt up front after that on another day when I had the right wind. And I went in and I followed the trail back from the rubs, and it kind of led me real close to where I jumped that buck. And I found a spot where a whole bunch of trails came together with really big tracks on it. And it was hell to set up in buckthorn in a non-planned spot. But I was able to do it. I had to clip a couple little buckthorn branches, but I was able to set up a spot. And the only thing that showed was one big old giant doe. But kind of figured, I already tipped my hand to him,
Yeah. Well, two things real quick, Dan. First, Brandon Sheldon, $5 super chat says, thanks, you guys have helped a ton. So appreciate that, Brandon.
Thanks, Brandon.
And second thing is, let's talk about pressure, because it's interesting. Maybe that spot, because it doesn't look like a hunting property, hasn't got any pressure yet. And this is the time of year where I feel like some of those obvious spots have got pressure. And earlier you mentioned pheasant hunters and duck hunters. Those guys are starting to get out now. So when in October, or maybe before, when do you start moving towards some of those, what you'd call pressure bedding spots?
Well, I see bucks in those spots all the time. The mature ones. I see a lot of deer in those spots once the pressure comes out. Usually the deer I see in there earlier is just the big ones. But I'm always kind of hunting pressure spots. I mean, because of the way it goes. But there's some spots you lose. The pressure spots I hunt all the time, what people would call pressure spots. But when I say I lose spots, like I would have liked to hunt the buck that I hunted last night, by the water, because I thought he was up in there, but I just couldn't get a wind, and then duck season opened. Now I wouldn't even bother hunting over there, not until the ducks close for a while or something, because they're going up in there with boats and stuff and pile driving into the cattails and stuff and shooting ducks. They're going to, push any deer away from there, and those deer are going to stay away for a while. And those deer know that routine. It's not like that even bothers them. It probably scares the hell out of, fawns and 1.5-year-old deer. But if that deer's been there for 4 years, if it's a target deer, he's been on that road. He knows that routine. He knows what's going on. Oh, it's that time of year again. Now I move to here. And they've got a routine where they go from bedding area to bedding area to bedding area, and they're constantly moving. And you got to get that timing down right and be in the right area at the right time. So it's not really, to me, everything's a pressure bed, and everything's not a pressure bed. They're going there for a reason, whether it's, and it's probably a combination of reasons. Number one, they're not getting pressure there. So you call that a pressure bed. Number two, there's a food source that they're using, or there's does you're thinking about, or it's the only place with security around. And actually, the duck hunters help me. The pheasant hunters help me. They push those deer into areas. Now, in a lot of cases, that helps me a lot. Some properties you look at me like, when the duck hunters come in, they do one thing. When the pheasant hunters come in, they do another thing. And if I'm patient and I don't, burn the spots before, like a week into both of those seasons being open, if I wait that period of time, I'm going to have a high likelihood of killing that buck in a small window of area he could be bedding. But if I tip my hat, I just put pressure in there beforehand, and when he comes in there, he's going to smell that I've been there a week or two ago.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize your scent's going to stay there for a while. So staying out and just waiting for the timing. is huge. But you got to know when they bed in certain spots and what's causing it. Some of the spots are obviously, like I just described, more pressure based than anything else, but some of them aren't. But it's really about the timing, and the sign should tell you about that timing too. I mean, you should be able to find that fresh sign and get a good idea of whether or not they're there.
No, all good tips. Dan, I actually think we have quite a few questions today. I don't know if there's anything else you want to talk about before we jump into the questions. I had one or two more things, but maybe we'll get through some of these questions because a lot of times when we have guests on and stuff, we only get a few in. So you want to do some questions?
We can do that.
Okay. If we run out of questions, we'll get back to one or two more things here. Real quick before we do that, I want to talk about Lathrop & Sons boots because they got a new product out. We had Steven on, who is one of the co-owners, episode 42. So if you're looking for a hunting boot, they've kind of got a whitetail specific product out now that's pretty neat. So I want to share that real quick for those guys. So this is called their non-typical insole. And if you notice, it's kind of got like a honeycomb shape. They call it a air trap 3D skiv. So what this is supposed to do, and I talked to Steven about this, is it's supposed to give you more airspace and air, obviously, just like down, right? The reason down is so warm is because it traps air. So Steven said if you wear like a high loft sock, like a wool or alpaca sock or something, these are made for rubber boots too. I should specify that. So a couple things. It's designed for whitetail, like to be a warm insole, and then they also, this orange deal here, they molded a heel cup because and Dan, I'm sure you've experienced this, a lot of rubber boots are real flat, and you get your foot just does better on over a longer time with a little bit of elevation. So that heel cup's supposed to help make your rubber boots fit a little better, give you a little heel lift, and then this is insulated. So anyways, pretty reasonable price on these guys. They're $35.
So these are more for warm weather, correct?
They're actually more for cold weather. They're supposed to.
That's what I meant. I'm sorry. That's what I meant.
Yeah. Cold weather.
I just got a set of them in the mail, but I haven't opened them up yet. I really want to test them. I'll let you guys know what I think when I test them. But I'm hoping they make the rubber boots a little more comfortable too. Sometimes you go long distances in rubber boots, and it's like you're walking in a coffee can, for a shoe.
Yeah,
they don't always fit as well as like a good leather boot.
I'll probably try these out because after we had Steven on, I have problems with footwear. I've got really, really wide feet. So I was wearing Kenetrek boots mostly because that was the only boot I could find wide enough that would fit me. And that's a high quality boot, mountain boot. And so right after I had Steven on, I ordered a pair of theirs because they make a super wide mountain boot too. It's not a rubber boot. It's like a, elk or sheep boot. And I wore those all elk season this year. And their insoles, they got Synergy insole. It's called. It's like a gel insole for their boots. I bought those too, and way more comfortable. So I'm a big fan. I'm a convert now. So I'd like to try these out too because I think they're doing good stuff.
I wear the boots too when I go on my hill country hunts or my like western hunts. Nebraska, I lived in those things.
Yeah. And I mean, that's really what that's what they're designed for is, western or open country and stuff. It's maybe not the boot you're gonna wear in 2 foot of swamp water. Hey, we got another super chat. That'll be a good way to kick off the questions here. Andrew Von Delowski, I apologize if I said the last name wrong. Andrew says, got any tips for how to set up on thermal hubs in mid to late October? P.S. That Fort McCoy Ridge is great, but has lots of pressure. So I think we talked about that on the previous episode or two. So yeah. So thermal hubs, what are you doing in those, Dan?
Thermal hubs, it's really about being patient. There's a reason deer prefers thermal hubs. If it's one that mature bucks are preferring, is probably due to the fact that it's set up in a way that getting in there is problematic. What has worked the best for me is all thermal hubs. And for those of you that are not familiar with a thermal hub, what that is like if you think about a draw, where the water has cut a passage down a hill. A complex draw would be one that has a whole bunch of draws at the top that come together meet in one spot and then go down. That's kind of what a thermal hub is, that little hole at the bottom of all these draws before it goes downhill, right?
Yeah, a lot of people describe it as like a crow's foot or turkey foot if you look at the topo.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what happens is the winds swirl in there. And you've got a very complex system of thermals and winds. It'll blow every different direction. So those bucks will get on those points up on the top of the thermal hubs, about a third down from the tops, and they'll have the wind going over the top. They can smell you from above. They can see down below. They're going to catch wind currents from every direction, and getting within 100 yards of those deer is very, very difficult. So what has worked very well for me with thermal hubs is when those deer drop, is to be very patient and wait for that wind to blow in the exact direction where it's blowing down that main draw. So it's blowing down through the bottom. Every one of these thermal hubs is going to have one spot that drops out. There's going to have a way that, if you flooded that with water, the water would end up going down, and you want to come up that draw into the wind and get right to the bottom of it, but not go up. There's going to be a temptation to go up into the middle of that flat area because there's going to be all kinds of, if it's a good thermal hub, there'll be all kinds of buckthine up there.
Usually a big scrape.
Yep.
Yeah.
You're going to want to stay to the back of it, because if you get in there, where they're making all that sign is where they can smell everything. All that in the evening, all them thermals are going to drop to that bottom. And that's why they're sitting down there making all that sign. They can smell everything from above them. And then eventually they're going to move through and in a lot of cases move downhill. And if you can get up there close from the bottom, that's been my best scenario to kill bucks and thermal hubs. Now, there are times, and plenty of them, where those bucks rise up out of thermal hubs and go uphill to food, or come out in different ways. And then you got to be just far enough back that you have the wind to your advantage and the thermals to your advantage, but you're not getting caught up in that thermal wind thing with the hills. But I would say that that hunting from below, coming in from the bottom, and knowing how far to go is what's really going to kill the most bucks and thermal hubs. Most of the times when you're hunting them coming out in different ways, like up on top and stuff, in a lot of cases you're too far back. They're going to spend some time in that thermal hub before they come out. I mean, you'll get young deer to come out, but when you're talking a 6-7-year-old deer, they just don't want to come out and walk up into the open woods in daylight. But they will drop down that thermal hub and hang down in that bottom and slowly ease out that bottom if that's the direction they want to go in daylight. And that's worked very well for me.
Yeah, and shameless self-promotion. A guy that I know that's a really good hill hunter, a lot of you guys probably recognize the name, Jake Bush. I did a podcast with him last year on my channel, and he talked about thermal hubs and how he hunts them extensively, and he's had a lot of success in Ohio. So if you guys are bored and you want to listen to thermal hub talk from somebody that's also very good at it, not that you're not good, Dan, but Jake is very good also, and you might get a little different perspective. Check that one out. Let's see, Wisconsin bow hunter. So he said, I just want to give a big shout out to Jeremy and Dan. Thank you for allowing the drawing. This was the last time we were on. I received my hat, greatly appreciated. So we had the 50th episode giveaway. Wisconsin bow hunter was the lucky winner, and he picked a hat. Dan sent him the hat, so he got it. Thanks, Dan, and thanks for tuning in, Wisconsin bow hunter.
Yeah, congratulations on the hat.
Brandon Sheldon, it says he is a new member also, so thanks for joining the membership, Brandon. Hey guys, I'm hunting in Maine, 17 acres surrounded by public. 2 does have been living on my property. I saw a big buck last year, late November. Should I wait late season to cycle him? I don't know if that's autocorrect, or hunt whenever. Oh, cycle maybe meaning hunt him the same time you saw him last year. I'm assuming that's what he means.
Well, if you ain't got no bucks on your property now and you got does, I probably, I think Maine has a low density. I think I'd probably leave those does alone at this time of the year, and wait till towards the end of October when that buck starts nosing around before I go in there and hunt. Because if you kick the does out of there or something like that, you probably will have a hard time killing that buck.
Yeah.
He'll come around looking for them. And that doesn't mean I wouldn't hunt. I wouldn't be waiting for that. That'd just be that time frame when I hunt there. I mean, I wouldn't be locked to that property. I'd be off doing other things. I'd be searching other areas. I'd just be waiting for my timing on that spot because you have a history of when that spot is good.
Agree. Yep. Find some other places to hunt in the interim. And if you got a camera you can run, or I don't even know. Sometimes anymore, I don't even want to run cameras, but that's a different story. I feel like I messed stuff up doing that. Anyways, listen
I may have
to Dan.
beaten the horse, but in case he didn't hear it, what I have noticed is when particular bucks, when it's a certain animal, and if you're waiting for a certain animal to come back after those does, the exact dates that you saw it on are pretty precise to when they come back.
Yeah, usually within a day or two, it seems like.
Yeah, the Rome Legend buck, that one was courting a doe. The next year, I shot him almost to the day when I seen him the year before.
Yeah, and I mean, how many stories are on the old forum like that too? Tons,
exactly,
tons and tons. Where'd it go? Killuminati. Thou. That's a good name. Killuminati. I like that. When is Dan going to Kansas? I don't know if that's stuff you want to share, but if it is, got any days or approximate days?
I'll probably go towards the end of October, early November. Not exactly positive when, but I am going to do pre-rut. I got to go to Kentucky soon. I was asked by some people in the Army to do something with Fort Knox and help some vets get involved in hunting. And it's going to be more for them than me, but I might hunt a little bit while I'm down there. But I'm doing that pretty soon. And when that's over, then I'm going to start seriously thinking about Kansas and maybe even getting back to Nebraska a little bit. I found some spots I thought would be really good during rut in Nebraska. So I might revisit those for a few days.
Pretty good states to have tags in since they're so close together.
Yeah.
Maybe get a double whammy out there. Riley Shiner says, Dan, I got bee sticks about a month ago. Man, these things are all caps solid. Very well done.
They rock. Yeah.
Yeah. Best sticks on the market. Justin Cromwell says he blew out his target buck. Will he come back to the area or will he stay away? And I already know what you're going to ask, Dan. Is there more information? There's not. So give me a couple scenarios, maybe one or two where he would stay and one or two where you'd write him off.
Usually age has a lot to do with it, but every buck's got a different amount of paranoia. Some of the older class bucks that I've hunted that are, when you get into 6 or 7 years old, you can't kick them out of a spot no matter how hard you try. It actually, in some regards, gets easier to hunt old bucks. You jump a 3-year-old buck on public land, a lot of times they show up 5 miles away. You jump one that's 4, 5, 6. The older they get, the more they just seem to move around you. They run a ways, but then they come back around, and it's kind of a complex thing. But I think it's with age. They get a little more confident about their spots, and they start to learn which ones don't bother them. I have noticed that over the years, I've hunted a lot of huge bucks, as you're probably all aware of, way more than I've killed. And you learn traits with them. And one thing I've noticed over the years is it happens, but not very often, that you jump a buck and then he comes back to that bedding area. It depends on the jump, obviously. But if I've had an interaction with a deer, a negative interaction, it's a hard interaction, it's pretty rare I get him in that same spot or ever see him in that spot again. Even if I bumped him like I had a camera in there or something, and I've seen him over and over again, it's like I never see him in that spot again. He'll never be on the camera again. He'll never be around again. But he'll still be in the area. He'll be 200 yards over in the next bedding area or whatever. And I think what happens is they start burning out all those bedding areas and start realizing that this is the only one that kind of works, or these 2 or 3. And they narrow down and they reduce the number of bedding areas. They got certain spots they bed. And like you just take a look at one of these swamps that I hunt. I might know, in the one behind my house, because I know it so intimately, I might know 150 different buck bedding areas.
Yeah.
There's probably 30 of them that mature bucks will bed in. but the rest of them will have 2-year-olds. Every time you go in there, it'll be rubbed up, but the mature bucks only be in certain spots. They get to learn what works best, and kicking them out of there, it can be pretty hard. But even if you kick him out of there where he does not want to be in the exact spot you were in, he's still there somewhere. You can hunt him down and kill him. I can't think of the name of the video, but it's one of my top videos. It's an old one, but there's one where I know it's one of my top videos if you look at the ones most played. But I shoot this big 10-pointer, and I showed the whole series of the hunt for that deer on a conservancy, and all the spots I hunt. I remember all the people saying, "What are you, nuts? You kept hunting in that same area." Well, the buck was there,
Right?
You know what I mean?
Kind of what we were talking about with Eric, yeah.
Yeah, you hunt them down and you kill them. I use that phrase a lot, and I mean it literally. You hunt them down and kill them. So I'm in the mindset, this is the property he lives in, right here. How am I going to kill that deer? If I bump him, like you hear these guys like, I bumped him, now it's over. Now and people get real negative about it. They're like, I think I bumped him and he's gone. I don't even know if it was him, or they see him and he runs or whatever, and it's a real negative blasting out of there, blowing or whatever, and they're like, it's over with. Where when I do that, I look at that deer running off, blowing, and I'm smiling and I'm smirking. I'm like, you just let me see you. That's a death sentence. That's my attitude. That's my cocky, arrogant attitude, that's what puts deer on my wall, is because I believe if I see you, I know you exist. Now I know you're in here somewhere for sure. I know it for a fact, and I'm going to hunt you down and I'm going to kill you. So I'm going to go to every single bedding area in that area based on the wind, based on the food sources, based on the sign, and I'm going to hunt every single spot down until I run out of spots or I kill them. And that's the attitude you got to take if you want to kill a buck like that. He is not, the game ain't over. When you see him and you jump him, it's just begun. You need to get that smirk on your face. You need to get that attitude where you're dead now. You let me see you. That's the way you got to play it. You can't get that negative side of seeing that and going, oh no, my hunt's over. That'll just ruin it for you.
No, and people, a lot of times public land, I mean, not so much with the hunting beast crowd, but gets a bad rap. But that's one of the nice things about, especially if you can get on some bigger tracts of land. Like if you're hunting grandma's 20 acres and you blow the deer out of there pretty good, it's like, oh, maybe he is gone. But if you're in a big public swamp and you blow him out of there and you've done your homework and you're scouting and, there's 6 or 8 other places he likes to be, well, in a way, you just up your odds. One of them you can cross off the list and go on to those other 5 or 6 spots, and your odds are better there now.
Right. And you got to kind of look at it like this too. I've had people say to me like, okay, I seen the buck, I seen where he is, but if I move in there, I could spook him. Maybe I'm better off just sitting back here a little bit. Maybe if I move halfway, maybe he comes here today. But if I go where he was, I think I could blow this area up. I might get a chance, but if I don't kill him, it's over. You hear that scenario a lot. And that always blows my mind, because every time you hunt that deer, you're teaching him. He's learning. And your best shot is your first shot. So you see him, you move in for the kill. You don't hesitate. You don't say, okay, well, this thing only has like 15% odds. Maybe if I'm patient, if you're patient, his pattern might change. He might be in the bedding area over here, and maybe it's across the borderline, or it's over there, or it's someplace you can't kill him. You got to take your shot and try to kill him right away. And if you blow it, and you really just blow him out of the area, well, then go find another buck to hunt. You had your shot. You had your chance. Be happy you were in the game. But you got to be aggressive. You got to take those chances to kill them. The reason I got those bucks in the wall that I got is because when I see one, all for nothing, first hunt, straight in there. And the majority of my biggest bucks are the very first time I move in for the kill.
Yeah, and I know that's something you say over and over and over, and it's because it's so important. I mean,
it is.
Dan, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this, but I've got obviously a lot of friends in Michigan still. A lot of those guys have cell cam or 2 or 5 or how many ever out. And it's crazy to hear them say since opening day, which was yesterday in Michigan, literally within a day, they're like, oh, my cameras are dead. Like just because of the people out in the woods after one day, they're like, they had pretty good activity up to the season, or like, oh, they're dead now, or they're an hour after dark now. So I guess it's important to get in there right away, first hunt.
It's all over. They should just give up.
Well, I mean, that's not that bad, but you know what I'm saying? It's crazy to see how fast they react to pressure.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah.
They know. I mean, I always said like Wisconsin, and I'm sure a lot of other states are just like Wisconsin. But if you ever looked at like, I used to think about how they open pheasant season. They used to do it at like noon. At noon, pheasant, and all these people would be lying on the side of the road going out to pheasants. And I always thought, man, if they did that for gun season, and I probably shouldn't even say this out loud because if they get the idea,
yeah,
it'd be game over. But if you started gun deer season at noon, oh my God, would they kill the bucks?
Yeah.
Because they're going out there while those deer are alive and awake and alert. And the whole state is going into the woods with an animal that can smell you for 5 miles, and they all smell you coming. They hear you coming. They see the lights. They hear the doors. They hear the activity before it's even daylight, before they're bedded. Now, if they're bedded and guys went in there, at noon, those deer are going to get up like they do every day, not knowing a thing, and come walking out, waltzing out,
Yeah.
I know people that, and I've suggested this to people that own properties that have talked to me about how to hunt their properties. You look at the property and you're like, man, the way this lays out, I would not go out there opening morning every year, which almost all of them are. I would wait till the afternoon. I mean,
well, that's why I bought the property, to hunt, not to wait.
Exactly. But,
yeah, you're right.
It's pretty easy to just, when you own the property, make a rule. Everybody waits till noon to start or whatever. Then after that, you can do your morning hunts after the deer know you've been in there. But to get that first virgin hunt, that's your best time to kill that deer. Why do you want to slap them on the ass and tell them I'm coming for you?
Yeah.
Those mature bucks get very, very intelligent as soon as they know they're being hunted.
Yeah, I was joking, obviously, but yeah, that's the mindset of a lot of people, though. It's like, I bought the property to hunt, or that's why I'm here. So I'm not going to miss any. And that's, Dan, you talked about a lot. You had a deer in a spot that you wanted to hunt, but you didn't hunt it for a week or two because you had all east winds. It's like wisdom and experience has taught you that it's better to just wait than to get in there and force it.
Yeah, and I mean, some guys would have said, well, I can get in over here. I can try this spot. I can try that spot. I know this deer's in here. And all you're going to do is get your scent in there and ruin it. And it's a matter of like, okay, that's the spot I need to be first. I need to hunt that spot before I get my scent in that whole area. That is to be the first spot I hunt. And if I go in there and I pop around like that, that spot ain't going to work when I get there.
Right.
And if I need that wind for that spot, that's the wind I need.
Dan, let's see. Lost my spot here. Brian Kozak said, I've got Dan and Eric on cam. I'm after the wrong beast.
He's got Eric on the cam?
That's what he claims.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I don't know. He doesn't say where he's from. We don't need to know. Maybe he was in Nebraska. Who knows?
I don't know. Funny. There's all kinds of Eric sightings. I've had people tell me they've seen Eric here, they've seen him there, and I think it's just other bearded guys because
yeah. I was gonna say maybe he needs to lose his beard and be a little more generic looking.
Right.
Start calling him generic.
A pink wig and tie-dye rainbow colored flannel when he's hunting, and then
there you go.
People wonder what the hell's going on in that woods and they'll stay out. Yeah, if he's actually seeing Eric, he's probably in the right woods.
Yeah. Oleg Chernenko says, guys, do you think that during rain your scent travels not as far as during normal weather, especially when you're trying to get in and scout on the way to a hunting location?
Oh, geez, I don't know about that. I know a deer can smell better in the rain. I know your scent sticks better. It's easier for a dog or a deer in light rain, and especially in a wooded area where rain ain't hitting everywhere, for animals to smell you.
Yeah.
But I really do think that the rain could pull your scent down or something. I have no clue. I really don't. I'd be guessing on whether or not it travels further or lesser in the rain. I would have to think the rain does havoc to thermals, because it might be cooling the ground in some cases, or You know, if it's steady rain for a long time, maybe not. But if you have a flash rain, it might cool off the ground real rapidly and change the whole thermal complex. I have no clue what it does, honestly.
Yeah. 2 comments there for me: hot, dry, and windy. And we talked about this before. I won't beat a dead horse, but I read a book by a guy that's trained like thousands of tracking dogs, and the toughest tracks for dogs are hot, dry, and windy, and less vegetation.
Yep, that ain't gonna stop you. If you're talking about wind scent, though,
right,
right, smelling you downwind, I don't think that helps you. But you're absolutely right. A windy day and hot and dry, I think you're right. It kills wind faster than anything. I never believed that in the past, but talking to dog handlers and stuff like yourself, I learned that, and then through observation after hearing that, you kind of see that that's true.
And some of the worst hunts I've had as far as getting winded were real high humidity days with like light and variable winds or misty rain. Those are the worst. So
humid will kill you.
Yeah, those are bad. Lungbuster says, "Hey Beast, hunting in upstate New York, bow opened yesterday. On these warmer weather days, what do you focus on? Shade, water? Do you stay on their normal patterns, catching them staging, coming from bedding?"
I'm basically falling back on my scouting, my pre-scouting for where I believe that the deer are bedding in early season based on what I've seen walking around in spring. If I'm not doing it, I'm going to place green. Where I usually find big bucks this time of the year is in heavy canopy, lack of trees, but it has good shading and has a lot of green wet plants like jewelweed or stinging nettles and stuff like that. Usually if you have acorns, if you have a good crop of acorns, concentrating on areas that got very few oaks and finding islands of oaks is really helpful. But if you're in areas that have lots of oaks on a good oak year, it can be just mind-blowing, and they can be anywhere.
Yeah.
But acorns really concentrate deer on areas that don't have a lot of them, like swamps and cattail marshes and stuff. Where we get an island or a mainland that has a point going out or whatever, those deer are just going to flock to them. And then it's just a matter of finding the spots where nobody else has kind of figured them out, but there's oak trees there.
No, good tips there for sure. Tony Thorson wants to know, Dan, do you guys ever do all-day hunts during the pre-rut? And then he had a follow-up question. When do you start doing them? Pre-rut, peak rut only?
Every now and then I do, especially if I'm onto a certain animal that I believe is in a certain area. I may slide into an area. Especially for me, an all-day hunt is usually something where once I get in there, I can't really get out of there and still hunt it in the evening. So, you get in there, you got to stay. But I really don't do very many all-day sits. A lot of my ruts are usually travel trips. I like to go to big buck areas during the rut. And when I do, I'm going to usually new areas. And what I do is morning, I'm kind of hunting bedding. I believe they still bed before daylight a lot during rut, but they get back up around 8 or 9 and they make another movement. And like they'll go check on does and stuff. And to get in those little tiny funnels, everybody wants to get in that ridge funnel that connects 2 bedding areas. Finding real little ones where there's a small space, a small area, maybe 100 yards, where they travel from one area to the next, and not a lot of people go there. Those have really been the key ones for rut funnels. I kind of lost my train of thought there.
Well, I'll jump in. All-day hunts, I've had way, way better luck in areas with better buck-to-doe ratio and areas with lower deer density. So out west, South Dakota, Kansas. I've never hunted Nebraska, but I'm assuming Nebraska, Montana. In Michigan, I didn't have much luck on all-day hunts, but when you got a better buck-to-doe ratio and a little bit lower density or not as much cover where they have to move farther to find does, a lot better. So, Dan, when you go to Kansas, don't skip those middays.
Yep. Yeah, peak rut in my area of Wisconsin, southeastern Wisconsin, generally you don't see much movement after the first hour of light or before the last couple hours of darkness. There's some, every now and then you'll see one chasing midday, but it ain't too often.
Yeah.
I'm actually getting more midday movement in early September on the cameras and stuff than I do during rut. When I
Interesting.
do see chasing during the daylight in my area, the bucks that I'm interested in tend to stay in cattails. They'll corral those deer and run around in cattails and never go by a shootable tree. I've done fairly well by finding little funnels in the cattails that force them through a narrow area and finding one like tree in there. And generally speaking, they're ash trees if they're in cattails, and they're dead because all the ash has died out here. And
You're going to need to give a legal disclaimer right now. Don't put your bee stand in a dead ash tree.
You're trying to blend in with this tree, use a bow to hide behind but that works. We've had some good action in the cattails with them running, but they're just you got to remember. I mean, it's a different world. You get down to Kansas and stuff. They don't have the pressure. They got the open terrain. They got to go seek out does. Here they have the does. They have really good terrain to hide in, and they've got a hell of a lot of pressure. So they get to be 5, 6 years old, but just not coming out of that cover. If they come out during rut, they die.
Yeah.
They die at 2 or 3. They don't make it to 5. So the 5-year-olds are staying in those marshes. They're staying in those swamps. They're staying in areas of buckthorn with no trees. I don't know if they actually learn that trees kill them. I think they actually learn where people don't go. And as of right now, I mean, people don't go and hunt spots where there's no setups. So I just find ways to make setups in those spots where people don't go. And I think those bucks smell where people don't go, and they hang there. So literally, even in rut, a deer doesn't get to be 5 years old by being stupid. He would die. If I take a walk in my area, in one of my swamps, on a Saturday, like in the first couple of days of November, I will probably in 15, 20 minutes walk under 4 guys. So if I was a deer, how fast would I die?
Pretty quick.
Right. So the fact that there's mature deer here that are living to 5, 6, 7 years old, and I'm shooting them, so there's your proof. The fact that they're living to that age means they learn really quick not to walk around midday in November. That's not to say they don't make mistakes. That's not to say people don't kill bucks like that in November sitting in a rut funnel. They do. And it's not a bad tactic. You ain't got nothing better to do, sit out there all day. But the fact of the matter is, the main movements from big bucks, you're going to have to think about where are they going to be able to do this activity without running into people. I mean, some people kill a lot of big bucks by using the method of finding places where nobody goes, as in securing properties, gaining access, knocking on doors, paying people for leases. And us public land guys try to find that forgotten little niche, and that's the huge difference.
Jordan Papp says, what's the latest time you will hunt swamp marshland in the season? I'm assuming he's asking about maybe when it starts freezing up, because you've talked about that before.
Yeah, I hunt marsh all year round. I don't know any time frame you wouldn't want to hunt it. I would say that depth and how far back they go changes. I mean, you get deep snow and cattails, deer start coming out to the edges, but you're still in the area. They might bed in buckthorn, they might bed in dogwood or up into the woods a little bit in the grassy area, or really brushy area. And some of them will stay in those cattails despite the snow or whatever. Very few, but some. But the deer are there year round, and so am I.
Good answer. Yeah, I know. Maybe the one thing, and I could be misremembered from the forum, I feel like I remember guys were saying right around the time of the freeze, when like the ice is thin enough for the bucks, well, I mean, all the deer to poke through,
their feet start breaking through.
Yeah, that they avoid it for a week or two until it freezes up solid enough for them to walk on it.
Yep, just like you would. I mean, you ever get on that ice, when it gets to a certain point, you can take about 3 or 4 steps, and also you put a leg through. You take 3 or 4 steps, and you put a leg through. I mean, you do not want to walk on that stuff. Neither does a deer. Yeah, and they ain't got pants on. They're cutting their legs and stuff. I've seen where they cut into holes like that, and there's blood on the snow. So they don't want to do that.
Good point. Good point there. Let's see. I think that might have been it for questions. So I'm going to reread through them, Dan, but let's wrap up with, I think one of the important things in October is things change so much every day. So for guys that aren't able to get out every afternoon, like you're able to get out quite a bit, for guys that are maybe only able to get out once or twice a week or on the weekends, I feel like October changes so much week to week. How do people, what's your best advice for people to stay on deer through the changes of October?
Well, the one thing is to really keep good notes and or remember what the deer were doing last year, because it repeats. Right now, at this time frame of right now, these deer are still on bed to food, but I'm starting to see the bucks just starting to get a little frisky. You're starting to see the rubs get a little more aggressive. You're starting to see them show up where the does are showing up and smelling where they walked. I mean, they're not chasing or anything. Well, actually, my son James had 2 does walking in yesterday, and he was going to shoot one of them. And a little buck came and chased the does around grunting and get a shot, which I thought was real interesting. But little bucks get stupid early, right? But you just wait a week. I mean, right now, today, if you go out this weekend, you're going to be hunting bed to food, right? You start getting out around the 15th. I mean, you think about that. It's not even 2 weeks. You know, you start getting, well, I guess from right now it is 2 weeks. But if they get out this weekend and, you know, another 10 days or something, the whole game will change. You know, because they're going to start working rub lines. They're going to start following the does. They're going to start moving a little further, a little friskier. You know, it changes things up. They're going to leave a lot more sign. You know, then if you get down to late October, which is my favorite time to hunt, you get up to about that last 10 days of October, and those bucks are still on a lockdown pattern where they're really doing stuff to a routine, but they're laying sign everywhere. They're rubbing every place they cross a doe trail or whatever. And you can just go find that fresh sign, find those bloody trees. You know what I mean by that is the ones that are still sappy, set up on it and have that buck come through and kill them. You just got to have to make sure it's near bedding. And, you know, but it changes week to week, and you got to be on top of that. And you got to be able to read what they're doing week to week. And it's pretty repetitive year to year, but literally it is week to week. I mean, we'll have a spot in about 2 weeks when the all the maple leaves are going to turn orange and start dropping. The minute they start dropping, deer are going to start eating those for about 3-4 days, and then it's going to be over. It's the same thing every year with the acorns, with the, you know, they shift to the corn, they're the early season hitting the jewelweed and the stinging nettles, and the bedding areas all shift, the feeding areas all shift, the does start coming into play. But it's the same thing every year. It's just a matter of figuring out those patterns and figuring out how to hunt them and not tipping your hat.
Yeah. I feel like these days especially, and you see it every year, you read about it every year, people saying, oh, I hunted my cameras and I was behind them all year. Well, look at your cameras if you had them out last year and hunt where they're going, not where they're at. You know, when you check your camera and your data, is, if it's conventional, is week 2, 3 weeks old, or even your cell cam, and, you know, you get pictures on Monday, but you can't get out till the following week. Hunt where they're going to be at, not where they were.
Yeah, you got a lot of people out there that wishful thinking hunt too. They find a patch of rubs or one giant rub, and they're like, "Oh man!" And they set up over the top of it, think there's a buck here, he's using this or whatever. They don't take the time to look at it and see how old that rub is, how old are the tracks. Look at the browse. You know, is the top of the browse plants, you know, are they freshly bit off or are they dried up and brown?
Right.
Or they were bit off. You know, has that deer there now? Because these patterns are changing every 3-4 days. You got to be on top of it. You got to be on fresh sign. You know, and that's all there is to it.
Yeah, real quick, and this probably isn't super applicable in the Midwest, but when I was elk hunting, talking about fresh sign, it's been, I mean, it's dry in Montana every year, but it was pretty dry again this year. And the one morning I was walking on a trail, and I could hear an elk off in the distance, but as I was walking on this trail, I could see urine spots from multiple elk where they were still wet. I mean, you know, those elk are within quarter mile, then half mile, because that stuff wasn't dried up yet, and it was 80, 90 degrees opening week. So when you see stuff like that, you know you're on them. that's the kind of sign you're looking for.
What I like is when you walk up to a scrape and there's fresh pee in it.
Right.
That buck's right there somewheres.
Yeah. Well, Dan, that'd probably do it for this week. Anything you want to add before we close?
No, it's a fun show.
Yeah, had a lot of viewers, tons of members on this week. I'm probably gonna miss them, but let's give a shout out to some members real quick. Zeke Outdoors, Andy P, Mike Feaster, Public Land Menace, Keystone Outdoorsman, Trout Morels, Brandon Sheldon, new member, thanks again. Wisconsin Bowhunter, Killuminati Thou. Let's see, we got David Pappy, Tony Thorson. Might have said some of these twice too because they keep showing up. Oleg Sternenko, Chris Ott. Who else we got on here? I think that's the majority of them. If I missed you, KZ River Kennel. If I missed it, it's just because we're scrolling through quick. Appreciate each and every one, and we try to do things like call you guys out and have giveaways and stuff. So thanks everybody that's supporting the channel. Appreciate it.
Hey, if any of you guys are going to be out chasing deer out of state in November, don't forget to get your absentee ballot.
Good point. Yeah, because plan ahead or what do they say? Prepare to. How does that go? I can't remember it right now. Something. Prepare to fail. Plan to prepare. I don't know. Something like that. Failing to prepare is planning to fail. I don't know. There's a saying in there somewhere that's evading me right now. Matthew,
like Eric after he sees a big buck.
Yeah, that's right. Matthew Wickner's on. I see Ashley. Ashley just popped on too. So Ashley said sorry she missed. She was getting her bow set up tonight. She got her new old bow back, so she's getting that set up. So, anyways, Dan. Last thing before we jump off here, a couple guys said, "Hey, I thought this was going to start at 8 Central this week. It was going to, but then Dan went hunting, and then this was what worked tonight. So starting next week, probably we're allowed to change our mind again, but probably next week we will be on Tuesday 8 Central, and that'll be the plan going forward."
Yeah, I usually do Taco Tuesdays with Carol, and last night I thought I was really onto that buck, and I told her no tacos and took off on her. And I just figured it'd work out like last year. You know, last year I snuck out on her birthday and killed that giant. I thought, well, if I hunt when I'm not supposed to, maybe there's a trick to that.
Yeah.
But it didn't work out, and because of how deep I went on a work night, I was dead tired. I got to bed at like 11 o'clock after I ate. And
you get up at like 2 or 3, don't you? Get up crazy early?
Yeah. So I was so dead tired today. So I said, let's do taco night today. And I'd just like to get to bed a little bit earlier today. So I thought we'll do it at 7. But we're planning on doing them at 8. And even that, I think we tentatively could be a little late on starting at 8 because of me racing home from hunting. And you might get one where there's one up and ready to go, and all of a sudden Jeremy gets on and says, Dan ain't going to be here.
Hopefully.
And you can wonder what happened.
Yeah, hopefully. So, well, thanks everyone for your patience and flexibility. You know, during the season, these things happen. So look forward to getting back on, and tentatively, again, we reserve the right to change our minds. Tentatively next week, 8 Central. Catch everybody then, and thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, everybody. I'm going to try and get more videos done this weekend, too. It's been hard with all the hunting and work and stuff, but I'm trying to keep up. I still got a lot of videos to get done.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the update, and we will catch everybody next week.